Hey everyone, welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to build some informational projects on Hatch. Informational projects can be used to teach topics of physics, chemistry, biology, maths, literature, any subject to the students in an interactive way. So I have an example project open here. And the way this project works is you can see here there is a beating heart 3D model here, right? And then the different parts of this heart is labeled by these texts here using these numbers. And now you see, as I look around and as I hover over each of these different numbers, the different parts of the heart is displayed, right? It tells you what are these different parts of the heart. Now, this is just an example project. You can use the concepts that you learn in this lesson to build any such informational project of your own. Example can be you can build a periodic table, you can build a detailed labeled model of human skeleton, of animal cell, plant cell. You can show the water cycle that runs in the environment, of how the water in the environment first evaporates, rises up in the sky, forms cloud, then it rains, goes back into groundwater, and so on, right? So there are lots of informational topics that can be shown to the students in a more interactive way, and this is one such project that I'm going to show you how to build today. So let's get started. First of all, as you can see, I'm already on my student dashboard. So if you're not on the dashboard, you can just go to kids.hatchxr.com and log into your account, or you can just visit kids.hatchxr.com. Even if you're not logged in, you will be seeing this new project button here, right? So click on the new project button and it will open up a page here that asks you to select what type of project you want to build. Let me full screen my window and we are going to start with this. So yeah, as you can see, I'm on my choose my template overlay here, and I'm going to select the empty project template. So I'm going to design the entire project and show the code of how the project is going to be coded. Okay, so click on empty project and you will see that an empty project template gets loaded here. Now, once the empty project template has loaded, you will see that we are in the code window, right? This is the code window. This is the coding workspace. You can write your block code here and you can run the code here. So before we start coding, we first have to design our project. And to design our project, we will go to the design tab. So you see on the top, there is this design button here. We are going to click on this. And you can see the design workspace opens up. So this is the place where we can design our 3D game or any project that you're building. So here by default, we already have some objects. We have a box, a sphere, a cylinder, and a ground. Let me just delete all of this. I'm going to build a new project from the scratch. So I select this box object on the left panel and I press the delete button on my keyboard. And you see the box gets deleted. Similarly, I'm going to delete the sphere, cylinder, and I'm going to select the ground object and I'm going to delete this ground object. Okay, so now you can see my entire project is empty. Let me first start by adding an environment. So whenever you want to add any 3D object, any type of 3D object, whether it be simple 3D objects like boxes, the box, sphere, cylinders, or heart, or texts, or environments, all you have to do is click on this Add 3D Objects button on the bottom right corner of your screen. So click on this Add 3D Objects and you will see that this panel appears that lets you add different types of 3D objects. And you can see there are different categories of 3D objects labeled below. So we are going to add an environment. So click on Environments here. And now there are two options provided to you. You can build your own environment using the Create Your Own Environment option, or you can add a built-in environment from the built-in templates. So I'm going to select a built-in template here. So I click on built-in templates and there are lots of environments to choose from. You can add any environment that you want. I'm going to add this contact environment. So I click on the plus sign here. And now you can see a cool looking environment has been added to my game. And I can see the environment object is present on the left panel and the properties of the environment is visible on the right side. Okay, so this is a simple part. I'm not going to modify the template of this environment a lot. Let me just start by now adding the 3D model of the heart. So again, I have to just click on the plus sign here, the add 3D objects button. And this time, because I want to add a 3D model, I'm going to just stay on this 3D models category and I'm going to click on the Sketchfab category here. So Sketchfab here lets you add different types of animated 3D models. So you see there is an animated checkbox in Sketchfab. Select this animated checkbox and then in the search box type heart, H-E-A-R-T. I know I want to add the heart model, so I just search for a heart model. And there are lots of heart models to choose from. There is this human heart model here that looks really good, but I have a very specific model in mind. I'm going to just use that. So I'm going to scroll down and you will see as I scroll down, more models get loaded. There are lots of models here of heart. You can see there are lots of different types of heart models here. I'm going to just use this animated heart model that you can see here. This is the model that I used in my original project, so I'm going to just stick to this one. You can add any of the other models that you want. You can try this model here on the beginning, or you can try these models here. These two models, you see, they are like a cut model, like partially cut model of the heart that shows the insides of the heart as well. So you can try using these models as well if you want. I'm going to stick to this model. So just to add any model, click on the plus sign and it will load the model, and then you can see the model appear in your scene here. And you can see the name of the model appear on the left panel. Once the name of the model appears, that's when you know that your model has been added to your project. It's really simple. So now that your model has been added, let's just click on this model, and now you can see that the model's position is really weird. So let's reposition our model. Okay, let's modify the properties of this model to the way we want it to look in our project. So what we are going to do is, first of all, I'm going to rename this model. You can see it has a very long name, and it's going to become very cumbersome when you start coding, because we need to be able to identify the names of the object that we are adding the blocks for, right? So I'm going to change the name of this heart model to something simple. So you see, beside the name, there are 3 dots here, right? Click on the 3 dots and you will get the option to rename. So click on rename and then just type H-E-A-R-T, heart, and press enter. And now your model has been renamed. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now that your model has been renamed, let's change the position of this model. Okay. So here on the properties panel of your model, you can see there is a position property that has some numbers here, right? I'm going to change these numbers to 0, 0, and 0. So changing the number of the position value here changes the position of the object. So you can see now when I change the position of my heart to 0, 0, and 0, this model has been positioned at the center of my scene. All I have to do now is slightly move it above the ground, and it looks so much better now. You can see the heart and the camera are overlapping, right? So the camera is a part of my player. Player is basically you, how you are going to be seeing the scene when you play the project. So select your player object and let's just move the player object slightly far behind, right? And this will look better. So I'm going to set the Z position of the player to 3. I'm going to set it to 4 actually. And this will work for me. Yeah. And I have this heart model here. I think I can increase the size of the heart model as well. So to increase the size of any 3D model that you add, the way to do it is changing the scale property. So you will see when you select your heart model, you can see the scale property here that is set to 1, 1, and 1. So it means that the object is of its original size, right? If you change the scale to, let's say, 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5 in the X, Y, and Z direction, then it will mean that you have increased the size of the object to 1.5 times the original size. Okay, so now that I have increased the size of my heart object, I can see this, it goes slightly below the ground. So I can select the heart model again and move it slightly up above the ground. Okay, so it says 1.85. I think 2 would be good in its Y position. Okay, so now that my heart model has been positioned and scaled, let me just select my player object and it looks good. Let's go to the play tab and see how will the player be seeing the game. Yeah, this looks fine. But now you see the heart is not beating right now. In the original project that I showed you, the heart was beating, right? It was animating. So let's go to the design tab and see what we can do. So once you're back in the design tab, when you click on this heart model, when you select your heart object, you will see in its properties panel, there is a built-in animations property. All you have to do here is in the clips option that says static pose, click on this drop down and select the second option here. This is the animation that is making the heart beat like it's actually pumping inside your body. Okay, and this will make everything work fine. So now if you go to the play tab, you can see we have the heart model and it is doing the pumping animation as well. Awesome. So now that we have the heart model ready, all we have to do now is add those labels, add those numbers as texts, then add the names of the different parts of the heart. So for doing this, what we need to first of all be aware of is what information do we want to show in this project, right? So I'm going to show the different parts of the heart. If you do not know the different parts of the heart, you can easily Google it or find it on Wikipedia or using your science textbooks as well. So once you are aware of what the different parts of the hearts are, you can just add 3D text to name those parts. So let me just give you a brief example here. So I know that this part here is the left atrium of the heart. Okay. And then this part here is called the left ventricle of the heart. This part is called the right ventricle, and this part here is called the right atrium. Okay, and then the top, this is called the aorta. Okay, so I'm going to name these 5 parts of the heart using the 3D text that I'm talking about. So let's add these names of these 5 parts. So to do that, we are going to add 3D text, and again, to add a 3D text, we just have to click on this Add 3D Objects button. So click on this Add 3D Objects button here. And now this time, we are going to click on the text category. So click on text category, and when you click on the text category, you get the option. Do you want to add a 2D text or do you want to add 3D text? Click on 3D text, and you can select the font of the text that you want. So I'm going to select this font here. You can choose any font that you want. So click on the plus sign over any of the fonts, and you will see a 3D text gets added to your scene. See that? Awesome. So now that we have our 3D text, we are just going to duplicate it and add as many 3D texts as we want. So first of all, let's change the position of this 3D text, and to do that, I'm just going to set its position to 0, 0 and 0. 0 in X, 0 in Y and 0 in Z. And you can see by changing the position to 0, 0 and 0, the 3D text has appeared just below my heart. Now this text is not readable, right? So let's change the color of the text first of all. So you can see that with your 3D text selected, if you scroll down its properties panel, you can see there is a color property inside material section. So click on the color here and then choose the color of the text that you want. So I'm going to make it a deep blue color. This will be readable in this environment that I have added, right? It's clearly visible now. Okay, and now let's move this text above. So I'm going to start by labeling the aorta. That's this section. This is called the aorta. Okay. So I'm going to place the text here, and then I'm going to label it part number 1. So I'm just going to call it 1 here first of all. Okay. Now you can see I have this 3D text, but the size of this 3D text is really huge. So there are two ways we can reduce the size of this 3D text. We can reduce the scale of my 3D text, and also we can reduce the font size of the 3D text here. So actually, let's just reduce the scale of my 3D text. So currently it's 1, 1 and 1, and it's really huge. So earlier what we did was to increase the size of the heart, we increased this 1 to 1.5. This time, because we want to decrease the size of the text, we are going to go to a lower number. Okay, so 1, let me change it to 0.4 in X, 0.4 in Y, and 0.4 in Z. And you can see that reduces the size of the 3D text that we added. But it's still really big. Let me change it to 0.2. And that works for me. Right? This works. So we have the part labeled here, the part number. Okay? So I have this 1 here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this number here, this text 3D, to something that I am able to recognize while I'm coding. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots, click on rename, and I'm going to type label underscore 1. So label 1 denotes this number 1, right? Now let's just add more of these part numbers, and then we can add the names of these parts. So I'm going to duplicate this number 1 here. I'm going to duplicate this 3D text. So to duplicate any object in your scene, select the object, click on the 3 dots, and click on the clone option. When you click on the clone option, you will see another 3D text gets added. The same 3D text is duplicated this time at the same position with the same scale values and everything. All you have to do now is to move this second object, and you can see there are 2 3D texts now. So I have the second 3D text here that I want to denote the left atrium. So I'm going to move it close to the left atrium. Right? I just selected my 3D text here, and then I'm using these arrows, these red, green, and blue arrows, to move the text and place it where I want. Okay, that is another way we can position an object. One way is by changing the numbers here, the X, Y, and Z position. Second way to change the position of any object is by moving the object using these red, green, and blue arrows. So now that I have positioned the text here, this one still says 1. See that? So I want this to say 2 now. So to make it say 2, you will see in the text properties, there is a value option. And in the value, you can write whatever you want the text to display. So I'm just going to type 2 here. And you see, now this second text here says 2. So I have 1 and I have 2. Now similarly, let's just add more labels. So I'm going to select my label 2 here, and I'm going to clone this, and I'm going to move this to the right side. Now this is going to be the right atrium. So number 1 is aorta, number 2 is left atrium. This is going to be number 3. So the name of this object is already labeled 3. Let's change the text value that it is displaying here to say 3. Yeah? And this is going to denote my right atrium. Now let's duplicate label 3 and let's move it down. Now this is going to be the right ventricle. So label 4 is going to denote my right ventricle. So change the value of label 4 to 4. And similarly, I'm just going to clone label 2 now and move this lower. And this is going to denote my left ventricle. So change the value of this new text to 5. Okay, so I have added 5 3D texts that denote the 5 parts of my beating heart. Now let's just add the names of these parts and then we will go to the code window to make the project interactive. Okay, so let's start with label 1 here. Label 1, let's clone this label 1 object and this time change the value to the name of the part. So AORTA, aorta, right? And then I'm just going to move it slightly to the side. So part number 1 is called aorta. Let's rename this. No, I don't want it to be named label 6. So let's rename this and call it name_1. Okay. So label 1 is attached to name 1. Okay. Label 1 is indicating the name of the part and the name of this aorta text, I'm calling it as name 1 for now. Now similarly, I can go to label 2. I can clone this one and call it left atrium. Move it slightly to the right side and rename this left atrium text on the left panel and call it name_2. Okay. Let's just do this for the remaining 3 texts here. So label 5 here, I can clone it and change the value to call it left ventricle and move this text to the right and change its name to name_5. Okay. And similarly, label 3, I can clone this label 3 and this is going to be the right atrium. So the text value will be right atrium and you'll have to move it to the left side now like this. Okay, so now we have right atrium and then the last name is for label 4, that's right ventricle. So clone the label 4, actually label 6 I forgot to rename, so let's rename label 6 here and call it name_3. Okay, you will see the benefit of renaming these objects when we are coding. Okay, it's these will be more understandable in the list when we create the code, when we write the code for this. So label 4 now, let's clone label 4 and this is going to be right ventricle and let's move this to the left side a bit and let's rename this to name_4. Okay, cool. So as you can see, we have all the 5 parts. There are more parts of the heart, but I'm just going to show you with these 5 parts what I'm going to code, the interactiveness that we are going to code, and then you can extend it by adding, you can extend the code and you can extend the design by adding more labels to all the different parts. There's pulmonary vein, pulmonary arteries, and then there are lots of other parts inside the heart, right? So you can have a more detailed project of your own by just following the logic that we are building in this code. Okay, so yeah, we have 5 parts labeled and we have their names as 3D text. Now when I start the project, I don't want these names to be visible, so I'm going to select these names one by one and turn off their visibility. So I start with name 1 here, click on name 1 and you can see in its properties panel there is a visible property that is selected. If you deselect this visible property, you will see the name becomes invisible. Similarly, for name 2, I'm going to make it invisible. For name 5, invisible. For name 3, invisible. and for name 4 also invisible. Okay, so we are going, whenever somebody starts viewing this project or playing this project, they are just going to see the heart with the 5 different texts here. And what we are going to do is, when you move around, when you look around and you like hover over these texts using your cursor, that's when the name of those parts are going to be visible. That's what we are going to code, right? So with the design ready, we are ready to code. So let's go to the code window and we can start coding the project. Awesome. So now that we are in the code window, you will see there's no code here. There is just one yellow block. I'm just going to delete this block because we are not going to need this block. Okay. So now you can see here in this project, there is this black circle. This black circle is your cursor. And you can see that when your cursor moves around, your cursor can enter any of these different numbers that you have labeled, right? So the interaction that we are going to be coding is when your cursor enters any of these numbers, okay, then that respective name is appearing on the side of the number. Okay, that's the interactiveness that we are going to be coding here. It's basically for you to understand how to show information of certain information based on where you are looking at and how you are interacting with the project. And once you understand that, you can expand that logic to build any other informative project that you want to build. Okay, so let's first add the logic for cursor's interaction. So when cursor enters this number 1, this label 1, this label 2, label 3, label 4, label 5. So when cursor enters any of these labels, so how we are going to code that is, you can see on the left side, you have some global blocks and some blocks that are specific to the objects that we have in our scene. So you see this cursor is a part of our scene and cursor is visible on the left side here. So when you click on the cursor here, you can see all the blocks that are available to code for your cursor. So there is this yellow block here that says when cursor enters object. We are going to use this block. So click and drag this block inside the workspace, and let's increase the size. So there is a zoom in button that increases the size of the blocks. So when cursor enters object, and you can see there is an empty circle here. This is where you can add the name of the object that cursor can interact with. So I want to add the names of these labels. So I know that the names of these labels are label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, and label 5. Yeah. Now, when cursor enters any of these labels, right? So rather than adding 5 cursor enters block for label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, and so on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of all the labels. So let's go to our category here. There is a category called list and maps. Click on list and maps, and you can see there is a block here that says create list with. Okay, so we are going to drag this block outside. Click and drag this block, and this is now inside this workspace. Okay, so what we are going to do is create list, and here we are going to add the names of the items that we want to be in the list. So we are going to start with label 1. So if you scroll down, click on label 1 here, you will see the very first block that appears is just a circular block that contains the name of the object. So drag this block outside and place it here. Okay, so label 1. Now similarly, we want to add label 2. So you can click on label 2 object here and then drag out this label 2 block and place it here. Now you can do the same thing for label 3, 4, and 5, but an easier way to do that would be you can right click on label 2 and click on duplicate. This will create a copy of the block. And then here you can select a different name from the drop down. So label 3 is what I want to select right now. And I can place label 3 here now. Easy. Now you see we have run out of the empty spaces to attach label 4 and label 5. Yeah. So first of all, what we have to do is we have to add spaces to add label 4 and label 5. And to do that, we are going to click on the settings button here. And you can see it contains only 3 items right now. So we can add more items. So now you see there is an empty space added again. And we can add another empty space like this. Okay, click outside to close that pop-up. And now I have 2 more empty spaces. So I can duplicate my label 3 block and change in the drop down its name to label 4. Duplicate this again, place it here, change it to label 5. Label 5. Okay. So I have all of these 5 labels and this is now in a list. Now what we have to do is, before we start, we are to use this list, we have to store this list in a variable. So we have to create a variable. So go to the variables category here and click on create a variable. And I'm going to call this variable labels. And once you have created your variable, you will see there is a block called set variable labels to. Drag this block outside and place this create list with block inside this empty circle like this. You can see whenever you are attaching 2 different blocks, it will show you that the blocks can attach amongst each other with the yellow highlights around the spaces. So you can see when I move my block above here like this, the black circle gets highlighted with the yellow border, showing that this pink block can be placed inside this black empty space. So drag your mouse and leave it here, and now you can see that the labels variable contains the list of label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, label 5. So what we have done is we have created a list of all of these 5 numbers. Right? We know that we named these numbers as label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4 and label 5. Okay. Now, since we are creating a list of these 5 numbers, we should also create a list of the 5 names. Because what we are going to do is, we are going to say that when the cursor interacts with any of these labels, we have to show the respective names. So just like we created a list of all of these labels, let's also create a list of all the names. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to first of all create a new variable called names, N-A-M-E-S, names, and then set the variable names and duplicate this create list with block and place it here. And I'm just going to change this label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, label 5 to name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5. Right? We had those added here. So name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, and name 5. Okay. So now we have 2 variables, labels and names. Labels contains a list of all the labels and names contains the list of all the names, right? This is why I said the naming to rename the objects in the design tab, so that when you're coding, it just is easier to recognize which labels correspond to which names. Because what we want to ensure is the position of label 1 in this list needs to be same as the position of name 1 in the names list. So you can see the name 1 is the first element in the names list and label 1 is the first element in the labels list, right? Like even if I were to, let's say, make label 2 the first element, all I have to do is to ensure that the name 2 is the first element. The position of the elements need to be the same. Like label 1 is the second element, so name 1 has to be the second element. Okay? Because what we are going to do is, when we are going to say that when cursor enters the second element of this label, then display the second element of the name list. That's the logic that we are going to be coding. Okay? So that is why the renaming was important in the design tab. Okay? So I'm going to stick with this labels and names here. And now all we have to do is, by the way, for those wondering how I'm resizing my coding window, is you can see when you move your mouse over this border here, you can see your mouse change to a double arrowhead that can increase or decrease the size of your coding workspace. Along with that, there is this button here. If you click on this, it completely expands the window, and if you click on the button again, it will retract the window. Okay, so I'm just expanding my coding workspace right now because there are larger blocks to work with, and this is more readable in the video for you as well. So okay, so we have created two lists, labels and names. So what we are going to say is, now when the cursor enters any of these label objects, so go to your variables here and drag out this labels block. This is what we can place here. Now we can easily say, when cursor enters any of these labels object, first of all, we have to identify which label object my cursor is entering out of these 5, right? So there is a block for that. Go to your cursor object on the left side and scroll down, and you will see there is a block called name collided object as. So this will tell you the object on which the cursor is entering. So I'm going to place this block inside the when cursor enters object. So when cursor enters the labels object, any object in this labels list, okay, then name the object that my cursor is entering on as obj. Let's just name it as selected label. Selected underscore label. Okay. So what we have to do is, all we need to do is we need to find out the position of this selected label in the list. Like label 3's position is 3, right? Label 1's position is 2 here. So we need to find out the position of this selected label, the label on which the cursor is hovering. We need to find out its position in the labels list, and then that position, the element in the names list in that position is going to become visible. Okay, so what we do is we are going to go to our variables and we are going to create a variable called index. This index variable is going to store the position of the selected label. Okay, so set variable index and bring it here. Place it inside the yellow block after the name collided object as. So when cursor enters any of the object in this list of labels, then name the collided object, name the object that the cursor is hovering over as selected label, and then find out the position of the selected label in the labels list. So set variable index to and go to the list and maps block now, and you see there is this get index of property, get index of block. Drag this and place it here. So set variable index to in the list of labels. We need to find out the index of the selected label. So click on objects here and selected label will be the circular block here. So in the list of labels, find out the position of the selected label object, and whatever this number is, set the variable index to that number. Okay. Now what we are going to do is we need to just find out in the names list which object is at that position, right? So if my cursor is hovering over label 4, then the position of label 4 in the labels list is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So index will be equal to 4. So now in the names list, what is the fourth element? 1, 2, 3, 4, the name 4, right? So this name will become visible. So we need to find out the element in the names list that is at the position of the index value. So go to your list and maps and drag out this in list get from start block. Drag this out, and here in the list of names, get from the start. From the start, count till what? Till where? Count till index. Okay. because index is the number that we are storing from this labels list when the cursor is entering over any of these objects. So go to variables and you will see the index block here. So in the list of names, find the element that is at the position of the index value from the beginning. From start means count from the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If your cursor is hovering over label 4, then the index of label 4, the position of label 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth position. So index will be 4. And in the names list, from the start, if you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, then at the index value, the object is name 4, right? So this is the object. Now what we can do is, we just need to store this in a variable. So go to variable and call it selected name. Selected name. So we show set variable selected name to, in this list of names, get from start the index value. Okay. So we know that this selected name will now be equal to any of these name objects. And all we have to do now is make this selected name visible. So go to your object, scroll down, and as you scroll down, there's going to be this color block, set selected label color. This is drop down is going to contain the visible property. So we drag this block outside and place it inside here and say set selected name, not selected label, because selected name is the name that we are giving to the name object. Set selected name visible, not color, visible. Visible to what? We are going to make the selected name object turn on, right? So we are going to make it visible to true. So we are going to go to logic category here, and you will see there is a block called true. We are going to drag and place it here like this. Okay. So when the cursor enters any of these label objects, first of all, give the name on which the cursor is hovering, give that name, give that object the name of selected label. Okay. And then find out the position of that selected label object in the list of labels using this pink block. Yeah. And store that position in the index variable. Then in the names list, find out the element that is at the index position. Okay. And store that element's name in the selected name variable. And then just make that selected name visible. So let's see if this works or not. This should work, right? Click on the green play button to run your code. And now you see, when your mouse hovers over any of these numbers, their corresponding names become visible. Easy. To add a bit more interactivity, what we can do is, we can say that when the cursor leaves these labels, we can set that selected names visible back to false to make the text invisible. So go to cursor, scroll down, add the when cursor enters object, but this time click on the drop down of enters object and select the option of leaves object. Okay. And leaves which objects? The labels. So just go to variables and drag out the labels block and place it here. So when cursor enters, leaves any of these labels, then what we are going to do is, we are going to set the visibility of that name to false. We are going to make that name invisible again. So duplicate this selected name visible to true block. So right click on this block and click on duplicate and attach it here. This time, rather than true, we will set it to false. So set the selected name's visibility to false. Let's run this code. So I'm going to click on reload here for once. And now when I click on the green play button, see, as I move my cursor over the text and I remove my cursor, the text becomes invisible. So see what's happening. Cursor is entering. Let's understand the code. We have two variables, labels and names, that contains the lists from label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when the cursor enters the label, so when the cursor enters any of these label objects, so cursor is entering over this label 4 here. So we are saying the name the collided object, name the object the cursor is hovering over as selected label. So right now label 4 is being called as selected label. Now in the list of labels, get the index of selected label. So selected label right now is label 4. So in the list of labels, get the index of label 4. Index of label 4 means find out the position of label 4 in this list of labels. So label 4 is at 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth position, right? So, and set the variable index to that number, that position value. So index is going to be equal to 4 now, okay? And then we are saying set the variable selected name, okay? Selected name will be equal to, in the list of names, get the element that is at the position of index value. So index value is 4. So in the list of names, what element is at the index value? Index value is 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So name 4 is at the position of the index value. So selected name will be equal to name 4. And then we are saying set the visibility of selected name to true. That means name 4 will become visible when the cursor enters this number 4. And similarly, when the cursor leaves the labels, selected name's visibility will become false. Whichever one is visible will become false. Easy, right? Now you can add more numbers here, more labels, and give them different parts names, or you can add a different object with different types of labels or different descriptions even. All you have to do is expand the list to add more of those information categories, right? And your project is going to work amazingly. You can use it to teach interactive information, STEM information to students interactively, or give assignments to students to build some interactive projects of the concepts that they are learning in their theoretical classes, right? Once your project is done, all you have to do is give your project a name on the top right corner here, top left corner here. So I'm going to give it heart anatomy, okay, and click on publish, and your project will be published. You will see that when your project is published, there is a link of your project and there is a QR code. What you can do is you can even scan the QR code using the HatchXR app, and the project that we currently made, we have made it so efficiently that it would even run in AR. You can try it out. You can download the HatchXR iOS app and scan the QR code using the HatchXR app and run it in AR. Or you can just simply scan the QR code using your phone without any HatchXR app and run your project in 3D or VR, okay? Or you can copy the link of your project and share it with your friends as well, okay? Now, I just want to show some different applications of the informational category of projects that I was talking about, okay? So I have some examples here. Let me show you. So I'm just going to go to my project. So I'm already logged in here, you can see. So when I click on the drop down, it shows me different list of things here. So I can click on my projects here, and this opens up all the projects that I have published. It opens up my dashboard and it shows all the projects that I have published here. So I'm just going to show you some informational projects where this concepts that we learned today can be useful. So I have this Anatomy 101 project, and when I click on this project, you can see the project. Once the project loads, you can see this is to show the different parts of different animals. And let me show you for humans. Now you can see here the skeleton has human skeleton has been labeled with different parts. All the different parts of the skeleton has been labeled. So this has been done again using the same concept of adding the text with different parts. I have not used the numbers here, but the similar concept that we learned right now of in the anatomy of heart, we can apply into this project and make this more interactive, make this project more interactive with all the multiple parts labeled, right? And when the cursor hovers over different parts of the skeleton, the name of that skeleton part would be visible in the project, right? And along with that, again, there are other projects that can be built. Like if you go to the sample projects category here on the dashboard, there is a periodic table. Now, again, this is built using the same concept of lists, and lists containing different lists containing information regarding what part of the project the cursor is hovering over. So you can see here, as the cursor enters different boxes on the periodic table, the details of that element is being shown, like hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, beryllium. You can see, right? So the concept that we are learning right now of lists and how to use lists in the Hatch projects can be used to build any form of informational projects for teachers to teach projects interactively in classes, and for students to build assignments for their theoretical concepts that they are learning in their classes. Okay, awesome. So try building some informational projects of your own using these concepts, and publish them. Share the links in the comments, and I would love to see what you're building. Awesome. See you guys. Bye bye.